Welcome back to the Roadside Rescue YouTube channel. I don't even really know what to say. This is me. And that's my wife's car. And to tell this story, I'm gonna start from the beginning. A few years ago, I was friends with the manager at the local AutoZone, and the manager at the AutoZone had this old CRV which their child was using and ended up crashing into one of their neighbor's vehicles. And this was back before the pandemic when junk prices of cars were really cheap. So I offered them $200 or $300 for the vehicle, which was way over asking price. Again, this was back when junkyards wouldn't even pay you to take the vehicle. Now this is all important information because I replaced a bunch of parts on the front passenger side. So let's take a look at that real quick, see what all I put on there, and what eventually happened to some of those parts just recently, leaving my wife stranded on the side of the road and us with a totaled car. Well, let's get into it. Well, the first thing I had to do when I got there was an assessment of everything to see what exactly I was gonna need to replace in order to even be able to drive this thing. I estimated it may be a little bent out of whack here, but I'm gonna see if I can straighten this up. It looks like it's pushed backwards though, so if it is, looks like it's coming down to that lower control arm. Oh yeah, I do see it now. That lower control arm's bent, so I'm gonna go ahead and take some stuff apart. I'm gonna get that lower control arm out, and I'm gonna go ahead and call and order one of those. But it looks like that's the only other thing that needs to be replaced. I'll replace that sway bar and link as well, since I'm gonna be taking it loose. But for now, looks like lower control arm and tie rod switch completely snapped. But that may just be, no, that's gonna be the inner and the outer. Oh well, that's okay, we'll replace those. I've got both inner and outer, and I'm gonna see if I can get that lower control arm up here quickly. So I just took my time all afternoon making sure that all the tires had air and looking everything over while I got working. And then I'll crawl back under there and get that lower control arm out, but all the bolts are loose. Well, when I was loosening that control arm, I noticed that the axle was bent also. The axle next, just to make a little bit more room to wiggle stuff around in there. Since it is bent a little, it's just being a little frustrating, so I figured I'll just make it easy and remove the axle first. And it looks like it's not bent, that shaft in the rack and pinion. Fingers crossed. Okay. I'm just gonna pop this loose real quick. So, oh man, that's a lot of fluid in there. I don't know how much I lost. But I bought 2 quarts, hopefully that's enough. All right, I've just got this lower control arm in place, so I can put that bolt through it. Went in fairly easy. All right, tightening up the sway bar and links here is the last thing other than that tie rod. We've got the control arm tightened on the ball joint on both ends up there. Nothing else is bent out of place. Put the dipstick for the transmission way down there. Check the oil and the power steering and the coolant and everything, brake fluid, make sure the brakes work, and you know the drill, get it started. All right, that started up like it was nothing. I'm gonna let it get warm, check that transmission fluid again. I estimated it was probably about half a quart, so I put that in, and it looks okay on the dipstick already, but you know, it's gotta be warm. Make sure that alternator's working, it's working. Yeah, everything's good. It started up like a charm, so looks good. So then I got everything ready and cleaned up, and after it was warmed up, I was ready to head home. That's a job well done, thanks. And I was super happy and impressed I was able to drive this car home the first day. Well, it's definitely pulling to the right, but I must have put that tie rod on a little too many turns. Well, I wasn't quite done. I still had a few things left to do. So the next day I went to the junkyard to look for some airbags and a door handle because those things were both broken. I didn't really have any luck. All right, well, there's one row of Hondas and they're all Civics, so I don't think they have any CRVs out here. They're just small junkyards. They don't have room for much stuff, so oh well. Yeah, you want to get in? And so, all right, so there's a baby Mac appearance. I needed to get a new battery for this as well because the battery was dead. So just a quick little time lapse of cleaning that up and putting the new battery on. It's like a 2-minute job on these Hondas, and the batteries are super small. So always fun to do one of those. And then I was able to get a door handle, actually just at AutoZone. So we're gonna go ahead and swap that out real quick. And Max, of course, being great help, but obviously love to spend time with him. So taking some time to do that, and we'll be able to get out of the door now. I actually took the car over to the Costco to see if I could get some new tires in an alignment. They don't do alignments at my Costco, so I'm just gonna order some new tires off of eBay, and I'll just try and fix the alignment as best I can for the next couple of days. Well, then of course I also had to make it look nice for my wife. The paint stuff for this new fender. Again, I'm not worried about like perfection, so I just got the, well, this is perfect match anyways, but the original Honda blue here, just a generic color, a clear coat, and a prepper. And I've got some sandpaper, and I'm going to do an oil change today for sure. There's probably a few other things I'll get done. Here's the fender over here, so I'm going to go ahead and clean it off, and then I'm going to cut and wet sand this fender up with like an 800 grit, and then I'll go ahead and paint, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 layers of that blue on here. We're just getting this finished draining up. All right, so then I had to take the old fender off, obviously, so I can put this new one on. We'll just time lapse that real quick. The fender liner was pretty busted up from the crash, but I'm trying to save that so I can reuse it. That came off pretty easy, and I'm just gonna try and get everything cleaned up as best I can as well. I don't wanna buy a whole new bumper, so I was just trying to unbend that. It's not really unbending. And there was so much bent from that collision on the front that I even had to adjust the hood latch and some stuff on the front here. You can see that the spacing on the tire looks a lot better now that I've gotten everything replaced on that side, and this should be ready to go. The fender's purely cosmetic at this point. Also got some new headlights. So that new fender looks pretty decent, and I'm also just gonna put some new windshield wipers on. And I also just took it into the local Big O to get an alignment. And thank you very much. We'll see you on the next episode. All right, we got her all waxed up. She's good to go. Say good to go. Now, we drove this car around on close by adventures for a few months, and one of the axles just consistently wobbled. So eventually I ended up replacing the driver's side axle because I never suspected it could actually be the new axle I just put on. And the wobble continued, but we continued to drive it for a couple of years, mostly because the wobble never really seemed to get worse. The wobble always happened under heavy acceleration, which is a sign that it's probably the axle. I just wasn't sure exactly what to do, thinking maybe it was one of the rear-wheel drive axles or something. It's honestly something I should have never had to worry about, but not knowing what to do with that eventually led to the death of this vehicle. Here's what happened. Well, today that brand new axle broke and it wrecked my car. Let me show you. I got a call about 10 minutes after my wife left home, and she said the car made a really loud grinding noise as she was making a turn. So she parked it on the side of the road. I'm gonna head over there and see if I can help her out. Well, I think I had a gut feeling deep down. I knew what it was, but as soon as I saw the pile of transmission oil underneath that side, I was pretty certain that the axle had busted up the transmission. So it took me a few minutes to get the wheel and everything off, and I didn't even have to take the axle out because it was already just completely busted. And you can see where it did bust a hole through this all-wheel drive transmission, which is like a $1,500 transmission. Plus all the labor on top of that, this is like a $4,000, $5,000 mistake. Trying to figure out what to do. Let me know in the comments down below what you would do in this situation. I'm gonna show you what I did, but I'm not quite sure I made the right choice. Okay, here's what I ended up doing, and let me explain it to you. I actually decided that I was gonna try and reuse the motor in a project for this summer. Because right now the junkyards around me aren't paying too much. In fact, I have a customer who just sent a 2000 CRV to the junkyard, and they offered him $266. Well, the motor is worth a lot more than that to me because it's still running and I have all the electronics with it. So I want to pull the motor out for a project, and that means I'm not even going to be able to sell the body of this vehicle back to a junkyard without a core motor in it. So I'm going to chop the rest up with my Sawzall and send it to the scrapyard, try and make a little bit of cash back on it. I'll tell you how much I made and show you how it went. On the first day I got everything ready for the motor to be pulled. So overall, I think I ended up making about $160 to $180 at the scrapyard. I didn't total it up, and it was over like 4 or 5 days when I just had time in the afternoons to cut pieces off of that car. So it definitely wasn't as much from the junkyard, but definitely more if I was going to keep the motor. So then we came back and I was able to pull this motor out. Obviously that's a big job in and of itself, but we're going to do a lot more than that. So the next day I just started cutting the car in as small of pieces as I thought I could fit in the back of my truck. It was a little scary sometimes, but I was pretty careful and able to get everything loaded up and cut up pretty safely. When it comes down to what happened, simply I think it was just a bad axle. The motor mounts and the transmission mount, they were kind of worn out, but nothing crazy. And the fact that the axle had that severe of a wobble from the get-go makes me believe that something was wrong with it from manufacturing I just never caught. As well as when I measured it, it was a little bit shorter than it was supposed to be. Just kind of an unfortunate situation. I don't think the length of the shaft would have done anything crazy by itself, but maybe that with the worn out motor mounts led it to slip outside of its cup and knock a hole in the transmission. Well, if you like this story, consider subscribing to show me your support. And if you want to help my wife get a new car, you can donate at the links in the description. This happened a couple of months ago and we're still saving up for a new one.
Good. That's a job well done.
Leave this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and I'll make more like it. And I'll see you on the next episode of Roadside Rescue. Thanks for watching.